Untitled English for Academic Success. College Oral Communication, Book 1, by Marsha Chan.
This is the first part of the lecture.
Published in copyright by Untitled.
The lecture is divided in many parts, so it's easier for you to understand parts of it. This is part 1. Understanding the main idea and details.
Lecture. Are you getting the sleep you need? Listen to parts 1 through 6 of the lecture for activities 11, 13, 14,
11, 13, 14,
and 16.
15, 16. Those are
Read the
important for all
directions
of
in your
the
book for
activities.
each of these activities. Then listen to the lecture. Part 1.
You'll remember in our last class, we talked about what sleep is. We went over the basic biological state called sleep. Let's just go over a few important points. Let's see. Do you remember, if you're lying down and you're completely...
I'm stopping that because I suppose that you already listened to this at home. Am I right? Yes. Raise your hand if you listened to this lecture already. Good for your homework. Okay, thank you. If you did your homework, you did the right thing. Now, I'm not going to play it right now because I want to know what you think about the answers to this first part, right? Why don't you tell me what you learned when you did your homework listening to this part of the lecture. All right, so we have 2 questions here, and the first question said the main idea of this part of the lecture is what? What is the main idea of this part of the lecture? Okay, so some of you are going, homework? What homework? Don't tell me that. All right, it's A. All right, so let's take a look at our options here. The main part of this lecture is a description of sleep. All right, now, if you didn't do this, what can I say? You know, homework is for you to go home and then try to work, right? Try to think about what you're learning. And then in class, you can get confirmation of your answers and practice. How about the second one? All of the following sentences are true statements. Circle the letters of the 2 details that the lecturer gives. So we see there are 4 statements. All of these are true. Each of us has a specific daily sleep requirement. When we fall asleep, we can't perceive anything around us. The sleeping brain is an active brain. The biological clock controls our body temperature. Now, only 2 of them were in this part of the lecture. Which 2 did you hear the lecturer talk about? B and C. B and C. All right, that is right. B and C. She talked about these 2 things. When we fall asleep, we can't perceive anything around us, and also the sleeping brain is still active. It's an active brain. All right, let's look at the next one, which is activity 12. And in this case, we do our favorite thing. You identify for me what you hear by raising your hand. And when are you going to raise your hand? What are we going to focus on in activity 12? What are we focusing on? When we're listening, we're focusing on what? Questions. Questions. Remember, questions are really important because when the lecturer asks the class about material from a previous class or reading assignment, you should be brave. You should speak up. You should answer. Don't be quiet like this. It's not very pretty. It's better when you answer the question. When the teacher asks you a question, answer. Are you listening to me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Are you with me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I love that. See, teachers love it when the students express that they are actually following. Now, answer the questioning orally, and if you say the answer, what does that do? Saying the answer can strengthen your understanding of the subject. But don't say yes if you don't really mean yes, okay? Okay. Now, in this case, I want you to raise your hand whenever you hear a question. Now, why do lecturers ask questions? Why do teachers always ask questions? Why? Because we want to find out how much our students know, right? We know you know a lot of stuff. So sometimes lecturers ask questions to find out how much the audience knows. Sometimes we want you to think about something. If we ask a question, then your mind starts to think about that subject. And it activates, it stimulates your brain. It stimulates your thought. And sometimes we ask you questions to see if you're following. Are you with me? Yes, that's what I'm asking you there. And to check if you understand. So do you understand the difference between separable and inseparable verbs? And if you do, we'll go on. If you don't, then we'll stop and talk more about it, right? And sometimes the teacher will ask for your permission. Is it okay if I turn off the light or turn on the light? Remember, sometimes you like the light on and sometimes you like the light off. Is it okay if I take video of you?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
No. Yes. Is it okay if I take video of me?
Yes. Yes.
That's not asking you permission, right? All right. How about this one? Sometimes we ask questions to be friendly. Like we say, how are you today? Are you feeling better? You were absent on Tuesday, but you're feeling better today, aren't you? So just to be friendly, right? And sometimes, I don't know, does this happen? I don't think this happens very often in my class, but maybe to wake you up. Hey, are you okay? Can you sit up? Yeah, so sometimes. But usually because they want to have interaction with you and make you start thinking. So this time I'm going to play the lecture from the part one, from the beginning of to the end of part one. And what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Raise your, so I'm asking you this question because I want to review and see if you understood what I said. I'm asking you to raise your hand all the time or just sometimes? All right. When will you raise your hand? When you hear a question. Yeah, when you hear a question. So let me go to the beginning of this sound file.
Lecture. Are you getting the sleep you need? Listen to parts 1 through 6 of the lecture for activities 11, 13, 14, 15, and 16. Read the directions in your book for each of these activities. Then listen to the lecture. Part 1.
You'll remember in our last class, we talked about what sleep is. We went over the basic biological state called sleep. Let's just go over a few important points. Let's see. Do you remember, if you're lying down and you're completely still, not moving, if your eyes are closed, if you're snoring, does that mean you're asleep?
No.
Right. Not necessarily. Hey, if you're a good actor, you can do all of those things pretty well and still be wide awake, can't you?
Pretend.
So, what's the most important difference between a human being who is awake and a human being who's asleep?
Something to do with the nervous system?
Yes, it does have to do with the nervous system. When we fall asleep, our neural processes, the processes in our whole nervous system, shut down. And when they shut down, can we perceive the world around us? Do we know what's going on around us? No. 1 minute we're awake and we can see and hear, and the next minute we're asleep. And it's like we are completely blind and completely deaf. Yeah. Another way of saying this is that sleep is a state of complete perceptual disengagement from the surroundings. That means we can't perceive anything around us. When we're asleep, we are no longer conscious of our environment. Is the brain turned off? Has the brain stopped functioning?
No, it's still working.
No, it hasn't stopped functioning. The sleeping brain is still an active brain. Right. Boy, I can tell you guys aren't asleep. You're awake, and you remembered a lot. You're really with it. Great. Okay, and what keeps us awake? What is the internal mechanism that keeps us awake during the daytime?
The biological clock?
Right, the biological clock. The biological clock usually controls when we sleep and when we stay awake, but not alone. Human beings have a way of messing things up.
Okay, did you catch all of those questions, or most of those questions, or some of those questions? Most? Okay, good for you. And when you review your lesson, you can try to catch all of them the next time. Maybe you can't catch all of them the first time, but if you try and try again, you practice it, you'll be able to do it. Okay, I'm sure that will happen. Okay, so we listened to that lecture, you raised your hands, and we also, talked about how important that is. Not all lecturers ask a lot of questions, but some do, and you should observe your classroom environment and find out what things happen when your teacher teaches, because every teacher is a little bit different, right? But that will help you in approaching the content.